Robert Wright is here. His books include The Moral Animal, Non-Zero, and Three Scientists and Their Gods. His new book is called The Evolution of God, nearly a decade in the making. It offers a new perspective on religion and the Scriptures. I'm pleased to have Robert Wright back at this table. Welcome.
Thanks for having me.
Tell me what you see as, and this is, I could ask this question, and then 20 minutes later you could say that's the answer. This pattern, which in the essence of this book, this pattern in the evolution of Judaism, Christianity, and Islam.
Yeah. So in the scriptures of all three Abrahamic religions, the Bible and the Quran, sometimes God is saying, you know, be nice to the unbelievers, you know. In the Quran, you know, he advises Muslims to say, you've got your religion, we've got ours. Other times he's saying, kill the infidels. Yeah. Same in the Bible. Sometimes he's, on the one hand, he's saying, wipe out a city because they don't believe in me. And another time, the Israelites not only suggest peaceful coexistence with the neighboring people who have another God, but actually invoke that God, the foreign God, Chemosh, to validate the relationship. They say, you've got your God, we've got our God, can't we get along? So I wanted to see what the pattern is in terms of explaining those mood fluctuations with an eye to seeing what brings out the best and the worst in religion. And the basic idea is pretty simple. When people look at another group of people and think that they can benefit from peaceful coexistence, from collaboration, cooperation, or just coexistence, they will usually find a basis for tolerance in their religion. And I think today that's true. People will find the tolerant scriptures in their scriptures when it's in their interest to do so.
Let me understand that. If you are looking for tolerance, you can find it in the Scriptures.
Well, certainly all the Scriptures are now sufficiently ambiguous.
That's my point, yeah.
Right. So you can find anything you want.
Exactly.
In
whatever
the Quran
you want.
Or the Bible.
Yeah, right.
And
is that, in fact, if you go to Islam, I mean, is there any place in the Quran,
yeah,
you know, that people are in the radical fundamental edge, such as Al-Qaeda?
Yeah.
That Osama bin Laden can find things that he can say, the Bible speaks to me.
On the one hand, he can find a verse that literally says, kill the polytheists wherever you find them. But on the other hand, if you look closely at the context of that verse, then what it says is basically, unless they're on your side in this particular war. And that illustrates kind of Muhammad doing what I'm describing. What I'm saying is that when he saw it being in his interest to ally with people who he didn't care about the religion. They were allies and they would be on his side. If you look at the Quran closely, that's what's going on. Now, he was a warrior, for much of the period that the Quran covers. So there are a lot of belligerent verses in there.
Right.
But it's clear in context that I would argue it's actually not fundamentally about religion. And I argue that the religious conflicts today are not fundamentally about religion, the so-called religious conflicts. Of course, it's true that people will always manage to invoke their religion to justify the killing they do, just as they'll manage to invoke patriotism to justify killing if it's a nationalist war. But the argument I make in the book is that in ancient times as now, what brought out the question of whether a religion would be belligerent or tolerant was not some intrinsic, inherent feature of the religion, some eternal character. It was much more about facts on the ground, what's in your interest to do now. There's much more pragmatism to religion than I think is appreciated.
Suggesting that religion was created in order to?
Well, I mean, I start the book, the term the evolution of God in the title refers to the evolution of ideas about God. It's about what anthropologists call cultural evolution. And I start back in hunter-gatherer days, when, so far as we can tell, every society on the planet believed in many gods. Right. And at that point, religion is not what we think of as religion today, in that it didn't have much of a moral component at all. It wasn't about doing good. It wasn't about don't cheat, don't steal.
There's no code there.
No, because hunter-gatherer societies, you've got 30, 40 people. There's not that much of a problem keeping people in line, really.
Yeah.
What religion was about was more what science is about today, which is figuring out how the world works, in particular why catastrophes strike or why you have huge successes in war. and then trying to figure out how to increase the number of successes and decrease the number of catastrophes. And the theories they came up with invariably were that, okay, out there are these beings we can't see, and they're remarkably like humans, you know, that if they do something bad to you, it means they're mad at you. You must have done something to offend them. And so that kind of logic is really the main thing that early religion is about. And then, as I show, as time goes on and society gets more complex and you get cities and states, religion changes and the character of God changes, and it becomes more about morality and good, and eventually you get gods that people think of as embodying pure good, but that takes a long time.
And when did that happen?
You start seeing that before the God of Israel. I mean, one theme in the book is that there's more continuity between pre-Israelite religion and Israelite religion and Abrahamic religion generally, Christianity, Islam, and so on. There's more continuity than is acknowledged in the Abrahamic religion. I mean, everyone wants to say their religion is special, you know. We had this revelation and then everything changed. But I try to show that it's an evolutionary path, and you do see gods that are very much about goodness and embodying goodness before Israelite religion in Egypt and Mesopotamia.
Does this book have some place between sort of pro-faith and atheist literature?
Well, I guess. I mean...
or believers and non-believers?
Yeah, I mean, on the one hand, I don't subscribe to any claims of special revelation, so I'm not, you know, a Christian, a Muslim, or a Jew. But I wouldn't call myself an atheist. And I should say I tell the story from the point of view of someone outside of the faith that's not assuming any divine truth here and is explaining things in terms of facts on the ground. But I actually also argue in the book, and I believe that there is evidence of some larger purpose unfolding on the planet through the workings of nature. So that doesn't necessarily imply an interventionist God at all, or the kind of God that these people believe in. And I don't know, you know, if I'm right in this kind of directionality in, for example, human history, the kind of moral direction that I demonstrate in human history or try to demonstrate. If that signifies some larger purpose unfolding, I can't tell you anything with great confidence about what's behind it.
But there is a... nature has purpose.
I think so.
Nature has purpose.
And I think more than scientists realize, saying that is not incompatible with science. And it doesn't mean there are spooky forces out there.
Yeah, exactly.
It can be that a strictly materialist physical system abiding by the laws of nature was set in motion for some purpose. I mean, just as we think of a car as having a purpose, it was designed to do something, but we don't think there's anything spooky about it. It's just a machine.
Yeah. But then who set it in motion?
Well, I don't know, and I wouldn't say it's necessarily a who. Could be an intelligent being. But, you know, we have in science examples of things that are purposive but not set in motion by an intelligence, and that's like you and me. I mean, animals have goals and purpose, right? I mean, they pursue goals, but they're designed by a process, natural selection, not by an intelligent being. Could be that there's a God behind it, but I just don't know.
And if you don't know, that means what?
Well, even though, I mean, in my case, you know, people are different in terms of what gives them spiritual sustenance. I mean, what would be great is if I could believe there's a God, and, you know, if I'm good, I'll go to heaven, and although it has a downside, thinking that you have to be good to go to heaven, I guess. But anyway, that would be the best, that would be my favorite. But in the absence of that, people are different in terms of what does give them spiritual sustenance. You know, some people like to say, well, we're made of the same stuff as stars, and that really makes me feel good. Well, that doesn't actually do much for me, but it actually does help me to think that there is a purpose unfolding whose direction you can discern, and it has a moral dimension. I mean, I'll tell you where I think we are in history. I think, and this gets back to, we've been here before in religion, in the history of religion, as I try to show in the book. The social system is now a global one, okay? And social systems are fragile. They can collapse or they can cohere. And I would say that the coherence of this social system depends on moral progress. That is to say, depends on people getting better at putting themselves in the shoes of people halfway around the world, appreciating their perspective, okay, and so on. So things seem to be set up such